deva Soma Sandhya Dhani Disha Kamku Swamyam Dharmam Iti Hyate Dhyas Hyate Dhyasya Sakshanahai. Synonyms. Surya, the sun god. Agni, fire. Karma, the sky. Marut, the air. Devaha, demigods. Soma, the moon. Sandhya, evening. Ahani, the day and night. Dishaha, the directions. Kam, the water. Ku, the land. Swayam, personally. Dharma, Yamaraj, or the super soul. Iti, thus. He, indeed. Ati, all of these. Dhyasya, of a living entity embodied in material elements. Embodied in the material elements. Sakshanihi, witness. Translation and purport. His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. The sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and the super soul himself all witness the activities of a living entity. Purport. The members of some religious sects, especially Christians, do not believe in the reactions of karma. We once had a discussion with a learned Christian professor who argued that although people are generally punished after the witness of their We once had a discussion with a learned Christian professor who argued that although people are generally punished after the witness of their misdeeds are examined, where are the witnesses responsible for one's suffering the reactions of past karma? To such a person, the answer by the Yamadutas is given here. A conditioned soul thinks that he is working stealthily and that no one can see his sinful activities. But we can understand from the Shastras that there are many witnesses, including the sun, fire, sky, air, moon, demigods, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and the super soul himself, who sits with the individual soul within his heart. Where is the dearth of witness? The witness of the witness and the Supreme Lord both exist, and therefore so many living entities are elevated to higher planetary systems or degraded to lower planetary systems, including the hellish planets. There are no descriptions, for everything is arranged perfectly by the management of the Supreme God. Svabhaviki Jnanabhala Kriyacha. The witness mentioned in this verse are also mentioned in other Vedic literatures. Aditya Chandrava Anino Nalascha Dayur Bhurmi Apo Hridayam Yamascha Ahashcharatish Cha Ubhej Sanghe Dharmopi Janati Narasya Avritam. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanatjana Shalakaya Chakshur Nitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Dapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadadmayam Vedanti Swasadanti Tam Vande Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sargajatam Sagana Sagitam Amritam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savajutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Krishna Padam Saguna Ditam Shri Vishvikam Sitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopika Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Bhakta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Smita Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevata Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very interesting verse for us to dive into. Translation again. The sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and the supersoul himself all witness the activities of the living entity. So how comforting is it to know that actually you're always being watched by someone or something, as we're hearing in the verse, the land, the directions, the sun, the moon, the sky, day, night. These are all witnessing all of our activities that we're doing, we're performing. Now, Srila Prabhupada is very nicely pointing out in the purport that even those activities that we don't want anyone to see, actually, someone is witnessing that. So it's very interesting, actually, this topic. Think about it, that we're always being watched. And why are we being watched? What is the why does someone have to always be watching what we're doing? It's oops, sorry, there's a bit of backlash between our rooms. Yeah, so we're always being watched, and it's interesting. It's like imagine you're sitting in front of like they're on the motorway and you're watching the traffic going by, and you're like witnessing everything that's happening, but you're not attached to it. So we're being watched. People are watching these demigods, these personified beings of the earth and the sky and directions. Yeah, they're observing our activities. But it's not as though they're like, sitting in a movie theater and eating popcorn and watching what we're doing. Like, oh, look at this. Oh, look, he screwed up there. Oh, look. It's not like that, as far as I've heard. But the good thing to know about this is that, yes, we're being watched. All activities are being watched by all these different personalities. And Krishna, the super soul, he's also watching what we're doing, I'll read from some verses in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, that explain this very nicely. And there's this very famous analogy of two birds in the tree that I think I've spoken of before on Zoom. That, yeah, one bird's eating, consuming, and another bird's just watching, just witnessing everything that's happening. So yeah, the super souls are watching, but Krishna, although he's seeing our activities, he's also seeing our heart. So he knows the heart of the living entity because he's super soul, he's Paramama. He's sitting right next to us in our heart. So he knows our deepest desires. So this is, although it can seem like to someone like, oh, I don't want someone to always be watching, or even I don't want to know that someone's always watching. Sometimes ignorance is bliss in that way. It's better if I don't even know, then I can just act as I like without having to worry that someone's watching, I can just act as I like, act as ignorance is bliss, I can do whatever I like. But as soon as you know someone's watching it, it sort of changes your activities, changes the way you act. So in a sense, this is good because if we know someone's observing our activities, then we'll act in a certain way, knowing that someone's watching, which might be the best for our Krishna consciousness. Just like if, yeah, like before, everyone has experienced this before. A great personality comes to visit, like the spiritual masters coming to visit, or um, yeah, or hear about in lectures from Prabhupada disciples, like before Prabhupada came to visit a center, or yeah, the spiritual master comes to visit a center, or someone that you really admire is coming to visit. It's like, quickly, I'll clean everything, make everything look very tidy, make everything look very pucker, quickly get my act together, quickly start doing this, quickly start doing that. Of course, we should be doing this all the time, but I definitely see within myself too that when the spiritual master's coming, I'm like, oh, okay, let me just quickly, in case for any reason at all, he happens to walk past the place that I'm living and happens to just look into the window, let me make sure everything's pucker. So that ever does happen, he doesn't see what it could be like or what it's like when I'm not on top of my game in a sense. Um, but yeah, this could actually be very beneficial if we were to be consciously remembering this point when someone is watching our activities, then yeah, it might help us in our spiritual development to be on top of it, to be on it. And in relationship to this pastime with Ajamil, I've heard a couple of times that Yamaraj, he has these servants. He has many servants. Obviously, he's a very great personality, but he has these servants called scripts, and their service is much like their name, to take a note of all of the activities, good and bad, that the living entity is performing. So he has hundreds of scripts, and they're watching everything we're doing, and they're taking note, like this person's done like this like this. And yeah, and then when the living entity reaches the final moments of life, these scripts, they go to Yamaraj and they present him with like a book. Sometimes it's like, oh, this living entity, maybe their sinful activities are like, here you go, Yamaraj, this is what this person's been doing. Um, and then sometimes maybe they present like a book, like, here you go, this is the sinful person's life. And Yamaraj flips through, okay, this is where this person's to go. So yeah, this is interesting just on this point of people watching. So in Bhagavad Gita, there's this very famous verse all of you probably know by heart, but just because my sadhana has not been as strong as I like it to be, I'll just read from Bhagavad Gita. This is 1861. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridayesh runatishtiti brahmaya sarvabhutani yantra rudanti mayaya. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and he is directing the wanderings of the living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. This is a very nice verse. One of Bhagavad Gita's key verses. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada says a couple of things that really stood out to me. He says, after changing body, the living entity forgets all of his past deeds. But the Supersoul, who is the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all of his activities. He says the living entity gets what he deserves and is carried by the material body, which is created under the material energy, under the direction of the Supersoul. Another point is, by the order of the Supersoul, material nature fashions a particular type of body to a particular type of living entity so that he can work according to his past desires. And so I find these verses very interesting, how they're all intertwined together. Sorry, these points very interesting. That the living entity, our memory is actually very futile, and we can't remember very much at all. We can't remember even maybe what we ate for breakfast last week, or what we were doing at 2:30 p.m. 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, let alone remembering what kind of body we took in our previous life and what our desires were in that body. And of course, those desires have fashioned the body that we're currently in, along with our past karma. So Krishna, he's very interesting. He's saying here in this point that although the living entity forgets, he remembers the past, present, and he knows the future. And he's remaining the witness always of the living entity. And Krishna is also described as being a very dear friend of the living entity. So it's not as though he enjoys seeing the suffering of the living entity, because the living entity is a very dear friend. Um, yeah, as we hear, he's speaking to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, but he's actually speaking also to all living entities. How he's the dearest friend of the living soul. He wants nothing more. Actually, I've heard he wants more than we even want to go back to Godhead. Krishna's wanting to call us back. So, so yeah, this is a very interesting position to be in, knowing that we're always being watched, but knowing that the super soul is also always watching us, and he wants our best interest in mind. A funny point on this is that's always stuck with me. Sometimes people say things in Bhagavatam classes, and it could be a very new devotee, it could be a very senior devotee, but sometimes they say something that just sticks into the heart. And I remember this devotee was giving a class a while ago, and she was speaking about this topic, and she was saying, yeah, Krishna's always watching. So when you're crunching up your paper towel and you're throwing it into the bin and you miss, and you're like, I'll get it later. He's like, Krishna sees that you're not getting it. He knows you're going to forget. So you might as well just pick it up and put it in the bin. And every time, without fail, when I do this and I try and throw something from across the kitchen into the rubbish bin, and I miss, and I'm like, I'll get it later. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, Krishna is like in my heart, and he's watching that I'm not picking that up. So just do the right thing, because this comes into mind. Yeah, of course, I don't always remember that. That would be very nice, and I'd probably act a lot different than I do, but I remember in those situations. So I want to speak that this is actually, it's it's kind of embarrassing to me think about it. At least I think about it for myself. Like, um, how I'm performing all these activities, and most of them aren't fully Krishna conscious. Actually, a lot of them aren't Krishna conscious. And this great personality was watching, and I was thinking, it's kind of like, maybe you're all quite saintly, so you probably haven't experienced this, but I've experienced it in my life before I met the devotees. That it's like when you're at a party and you're drinking some poisoning substances, and you do some stupid things. You do some things that you wouldn't do if you were in a clear state of mind. And yeah, you wake up the next morning and you don't remember what you've done. You've just, uh, poisoned your mind so much that it kind of blacks out. But your friends are there and they're all laughing at you. I can't believe you did this. They start showing you these pictures. Look, this is what you did. This is what you did. And then you feel very embarrassed. Like, oh man, I can't believe I acted like that. I can't believe I, did this or did that, or that's just so embarrassing. That I would do something like that. And it's kind of like Krishna is looking at us and like saying, it's just that feeling of embarrassment is actually, we should also feel it in our life currently. Like, man, um instead of, taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada's books, I just did this, I did that instead. Or instead of, my attentive japa, I was chanting and driving. Or instead of, I don't know, doing something productive, I did this instead. And then there's this feeling of guilt that comes with that naturally, but there also can be like, oh man, I should have taken shelter of Krishna in this way, or this sort of embarrassment feeling of I tried to enjoy the material energy and it didn't work, because it never really works. I tried to enjoy the material energy and it didn't work. I could have just done the spiritual energy, and Krishna witnessed that. I had to let Krishna witness my attempts at enjoyment, which is embarrassing, because Krishna is the source of all enjoyment. And actually, any enjoyment that we think we can do, Krishna can do about 1,000 times better. And in a way that's actually perfect. As we hear, the material world is just a reflection of the spiritual world, but it's like an perverted reflection. So it's not actually, yeah, it doesn't actually make sense. Like the perfect example of the friendship we see in the spiritual world with Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends, or the gopis and her sakhis. And here we have like the most perverted reflections of friendship. Of course, amongst devotees, it's different because we're striving for each other's best interest in Krishna consciousness. But in the material world, it's very polluted. Um, it's a very yeah, it's a very like constantly trying to one up the other person sort of situation. Like I have so many memories of friends, like even myself, uh, you're at a, going with your friends and you go and you buy some chips or some cookies and you have some and then your friend has some and then you're like, no, you should eat more, you should eat more. Oh, full. No, 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 please, please, please eat more. Why do I want you to eat more? Because then you'll get fatter than me and then I'll feel better about myself because you're bigger than I am. So it's actually all this very twisted sort of uh yeah, subconscious hate that we're experiencing. Um and yeah, so our friendships and our experience in the material world is actually just a very perverted reflection. And when we try and enjoy it in that perverted way, it's embarrassing because it's nothing in comparison to the way that we could actually properly be enjoying in Krishna consciousness through the processes of hearing and chanting or the 9 processes of devotional service. Um, at least for myself, I can experience like, oh wow, this activity is, I can't really relate it to devotional service. And then you try and enjoy it. And then afterwards you're like, ah, that was embarrassing because, Krishna's in my heart, he's witnessing this. Anyways, I was just thinking about this point the other day. Um, so yeah, all of our intents to enjoy, they really just come down to this desire to control and enjoy. And this desire is very strong. We really want to control and enjoy. We want to get some pleasure from something, and we want to try and manipulate it so that it works for us. But as my spiritual master said many times, that whenever the moment you start to try to control something for your own pleasure, that's the moment the suffering actually begins. So yeah, it's very interesting. I witnessed it very many times. The moment you try, I'm just going to enjoy like this, and then very shortly, the suffering is just behind it. And actually, we're always, yeah, in our life, the grass always looks greener on the other side of the forest, on the other side of the lake. I was experiencing this yesterday. We were going to this lake. We're going to go swimming on this lake that's 30 minutes away over the mountain, and I was thinking, oh, it'll be nice. It'll be like this. It'll be like that. And when we arrived there, we had arrived on the opposite side, so it was just a boating area. Oh, we want to be over there. We want to go to the swimming place. Then we got in the car and we were driving. And as we were driving on one side of the lake and we could see the other side. I was pointing, I was like, yeah, 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 that's where we want to be. That's where we want to be. Look at that nice green grass. Look at those trees. Like that looks nice. That looks like a nice place to go swimming. Let's go there. Let's go there. So then what happens is you get there, and then as soon as we pull up, there's this huge red sign that says no swimming in lake. Like, instantly crushed. No, I was just ruining my enjoyment. It's okay, well, let's go anyways and see, maybe we'll ask some locals, maybe there's just not safe or something. So we go and someone's like, oh yeah, the water is really, really dirty. You don't actually want to go in there. And then as we approach, we can see like a bunch of plywood and random stuff in the water. And I'm like, oh, actually, it doesn't look very nice. Anyways, we were discussing how, yes, as we were driving up, we were thinking, man, okay, what kind of um, so-called material happiness are we going to be experiencing in this situation, and what kind of distress? What's the material distress that's going to come from this situation that we're trying to enjoy? And it's interesting you're talking like this. I was thinking, okay, my mind always goes to the worst possible situation. So I was thinking, okay, there must be in this lake. Before we realized that we couldn't swim in it, I was thinking in this lake, maybe there's giant snapping turtles And that's going to be a misery for me. Um, this will be the suffering that I experience. And he was thinking, maybe I'll go into a bush and it'll just be full of poison ivy. So it's interesting to think about it. Like here I go to enjoy, but also I know I'm going to suffer. Let me think of maybe some of the ways that I might suffer from the situation. And then at least it gives a little bit of a reality check. Um, and then of course there's always ways you think you might enjoy it. Maybe the water will be so nice and cool and be swimming and it'll be fun and refreshing and relaxing for the body. And that'll help me in my devotional service because it's recreation. Recreation is good. We should practice some sort of recreation. In some way for us that's beneficial for devotional service. So yeah, I was thinking like this, but also thinking on the side, there's this, you're going to experience some sort of suffering with it. Or maybe everything is so nice and then you come home and you're so full because you ate so much prasad that you can't function properly. Um, and actually we were also laughing that in the situation, actually, oh, there is really, when we're trying to enjoy the material world, when you're functioning, um, kind of not thinking directly of Krishna's pleasure, then all you see is just birth, death, disease, and old age. And you see different people just trying to enjoy that, and they're just experiencing this is birth, this is death, this is old age, this is disease, this is how you're buying, you're working, you're consuming, and you're dying. Um, so yeah, this is just basically material life summed up. You buy, work, consume, die, or you buy, work, party, die, as you might be more applicable to our generation, and you're experiencing birth, death, disease, and old age. These are the sufferings of the material body. Um, but there's this really nice pastime that I've heard from Indradyumna Maharaj that he tells of an instance when he was going through, he had a goal in his mind he wanted to reach. It was, not directly related to Krishna. Um, and yeah, he experienced so much suffering as a result of that. But in the end, because he was very sincerely devoted to his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, he actually had a very nice result. So yeah, this could be share it because it's very nice. Helps me and this points on these points. So yeah, Nagari Swami, before he was a sannyasi, I'll just retell it the way I've heard it. I'm sure it's been told many different ways, so please forgive me if you've heard this before and I'm telling it incorrectly. Before he was a sannyasi, he was um Indradyumna, just Indradyumna Prabhu. And an opportunity came up where Srila Prabhupada was going to London, and I think he was serving Srila Prabhupada this time, and he wanted to go. He wanted to go to London because he wanted to see the Beatles. And he's like, "Oh, the Beatles, like London kirtans. You've heard so much about it. This will be so ecstatic. Like, I really want to go. Um, I really want to go with the devotees. I want to go on this this experience." And so I can't remember exactly the details now. It has been a while since I've heard this past time. But I think I remember what happened. Is that one devotee he was going, and there was only a couple of devotees who were going to be able to go. And Indradyumna Prabhu had asked him like, please, 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 I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. And this devotee said, okay, you can go, but only if you can get a flight on the exact same time, on the exact same flight. If you can get yourself on that plane, then you're welcome to come. So he had contacted this, had gotten some tickets and contacted this air hostess of this, or sorry, contacted the airplane company at that time and had said, like, I need to get on this plane. And the woman was like, sorry, we're all full. And then he just said, listen, I need to be on this plane because it's my spiritual master is going and I need to be there. And I want to be there with him. So she, after listening to his like explanation, she's like, wow, that's really touching. Okay, actually, there's an opening on the seat. You can go. So he's on this plane with Srila Prabhupada and the other devotees, and they're going to, to London to stay with the devotees there, to see the Beatles, to meet George Harrison, etc. So Anujima Swami is very excited. He's very excited to see the Beatles, to see the kirtan, to be a part of like this crew that's going with Srila Prabhupada. It's always a very special service to do anything, any service for the spiritual master directly is a very nice opportunity. So yeah, they arrive there in the airport and everyone goes through security and customs and they get there and there's this huge kirtan. They can hear it. It's just outside the doors. It's like booming kirtan. Everyone's so ecstatic to see Srila Prabhupada. But there's some problem. One of Srila Prabhupada's bags didn't arrive. And the time's kind of pushing. He's needing to go do this program. So the devotees are talking and one of Srila Prabhupada's servants says, "Oh, what about, that Indradumya Prabhu? Maybe he can stay back and take the bag." And Indradumya, he's described, he's like hiding. He wanted to like hide behind a pole, make himself invisible. No, 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 please don't pick me. I want to go to the kirtan. Don't pick me. And then Prabhupada's like, "Yep, he can stay." So then he's left at the airport and he's waiting for hours and hours and hours. And finally, Srila Prabhupada's bag comes. And he's so grumpy and he's so hungry. And so he picks up the bag and he, pulls it outside and it's like pouring rain, like total London weather. So he calls down a cab and he's like, "Okay, take me to this address." So the cab driver drives him and he's like, can tell he's a little off. So he's like, "Are you okay?" And he's just like, "I'm fine." Everything's fine. So finally he gets there, he pulls the bag out, he's like dragging this heavy bag um up to the door and he like knocks on the door. And like this brahmachari comes and opens the door and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "My name's Indra uh, Prabhu. I'm, here with Srila Prabhupada." And then everybody's like, "Oh, welcome." And he comes and he's like, "Prabhu, man, you just missed the most ecstatic program." It was like Srila Prabhupada gave a talk and then he led a kirtan and everyone was dancing. And then we had this huge feast. Prabhu, you just missed such a nice program. So of course it's just like increasing the pain in the heart. And then he's like, "Okay," he's like, drags the bag in and he's like, "Yes, I was at the airport, I was waiting for this bag." Says, "Is there any prasad left?" And the Prabhu's like, "Oh." And he's like, he looks around and he sees like this, the line. And he's describing it. And he's like, "Yeah, all these brahmacharis were like on their left side, like rubbing their stomachs, like belching and like, licking their plates. Like, he's like, "Oh, Prabhu, sorry, we just finished the feast. There's like no prasad left." He's like, "Oh my God, I'm so hungry." And like, just like, one thing after another. So it's just seemingly endless. So his frustration's increasing, increasing. So he's like, "Okay, I'm just gonna take this bag to Prabhupada's room." So he's like dragging this heavy bag up the stairs and he's like pulling it from the back. And he's just pulling it, pulling it, pulling it. And he sees like, okay, Srila Prabhupada's room. So he just like, so like so much is going on in his heart. He's just like frustrated and tired and hungry. And, I had to do this service and I just wanted to see the Beatles and now I had to do all these things and so many things seemingly to impede that uh, experience he wanted. So he's pulling it, and he just, pushes the door open and walks in backward with the bag and is pulling it in and like kind of grumbling to himself. And then he hears this voice, "Watch out, you're gonna bump into Srila Prabhupada." So then he stops and he like turns around. Srila Prabhupada's like right in front of him. He's like, "Oh," and he just like, dandavats on the ground. And then as he's on the ground paying his obeisances, he just feels this like slap on his back. And you described it that Srila Prabhupada like slapped him really hard on his shoulder and he like said something. And then he was there for a little bit longer and then he just walked away. When Indra Prabhu sat up, he's looking at the devotee and the devotee was like looking at him like mouth open, like, "Oh my God, Srila Prabhupada just slapped you." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, I felt it." And then the devotee's like, "Did you hear what he said to you?" He's like, "No, I didn't hear what he said." He said, he's like, "It's so sweet. I've never heard him say anything like that to anyone before." And then Jimmy Prabhu's like, "What did he say? What did he say?" And he said, "So much endeavor in this material world, but when I take you back home to Godhead, back home, back to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. And I just thought this is such like, a nice uh, pastime to remember and story and like message to think about. That we have so much endeavor in this material world and we're trying so many different ways to do things and, make them Krishna conscious, relate them to devotional service, progress in spiritual life. Um, but if we just follow the simple path of chanting Hare Krishna, like we were reading in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, like so many times in that purport, Srila Prabhupada's just saying like, just chant Hare Krishna, just take shelter of the Maha Mantra. If we do this, then yeah, at the end of life, it's very easy. The spiritual master will just take us back to God. We'll just go. We'll just think of Krishna when we're chanting our rounds. It doesn't, when we're leaving our body, we'll just focus on Krishna because we've been doing it for so many years. It'll just be an easy thing to do. It doesn't have to be tricky. It doesn't have to be hard. But that's the struggle we go for it, the struggle we're experiencing. It's yeah, there's going to be a struggle in life. Life is a struggle. There's a lot of endeavor in this material world. But yeah, when Srila Prabhupada said, but when I take you back home to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. The spiritual world is a very sublime place. It's easy, it's sublime. It's full of Krishna's pastimes. If we read Nectar of Devotion, the Krishna book, regularly, even Chaitanya Charitamrita, then our heart becomes softened to the pastimes of Krishna because they're actually very beautiful. And they soften the heart. And we can see, wow, the spiritual world is so sweet, so nice, Just hear about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and it's just so comforting for the soul. Because this is actually the supreme comfort. This is the best thing that we can take shelter of. I have so much experience, and I'm just, excuse me, I'm relearning this lesson so many times, and I'm hoping one day I'll actually remember it. But yeah, you can take shelter of so many things. And the mind definitely does not, at least my mind does definitely not want to take shelter of Krishna. Actually, we'll take shelter of everything else before it takes shelter of Krishna. And it will suffer so many ways, of course, like, oh, actually, yeah, reading Bhagavatam is quite nice. Or, yeah, actually, chanting your rounds all in the morning is actually the best thing that you can do. Um, and yeah, just constantly trying to learn that lesson is what will eventually, I'm hoping, one day stick. And I'll actually realize it without having to endeavor so much externally before getting there. Um, yeah, and then, nothing is as calming for the mind, nothing is as restful for the body and the mind as actually engaging in devotional service. And even if, we do a lot of service, we work very hard, we might be working many hours in the week just so we can support our family, which is service, although it doesn't always feel like it. Or maybe we're doing more direct service. We're, putting in so many hours on the roster so we can serve the upfront project, be it frontliners in service or be supporters in the background. It's just all devotional service. It's all absolute to Krishna. Uh, then, yeah, actually, all of that endeavor, all of that. Sometimes you need a break. You need to go on a holiday. But I've noticed for myself many times that might go here, might go there, might relax and be like, oh, I just want to watch a movie because that was so relaxing for me before. I met the devotees. That's always what I would do to relax, just like click on Netflix and space out. But actually, much more relaxing from that because that actually just disturbs the mind because then we start thinking about all those sorts of things during the day is to just open up Srimad Bhagavatam and read for like 2 hours straight. And then afterwards, you're like, wow, I feel so relaxed because Krishna consciousness is what's soothing to the heart. So yeah, hopefully all of your blessings will actually realize that one day and I'll stop trying to enjoy the material world and just suffer unlimitedly. So, and there, I've got about 10 minutes for comments, questions, corrections. If anybody has anything they'd like to share, please go for it.
Hi, Krishna. Good morning, Madhukar and Leela. What a lovely class you gave this morning, and so many beautiful examples and reading from Bhagavad Gita. And I was thinking something very similar when you were talking about cleaning and how, the super soul is living there in our heart. It's the home and is giving us a way to be cleansed, like our sadhana. And then are we willing, to keep it clean, like, to try and keep it clean? And I was thinking about how, yeah, when guests are coming, you want everything picked up and everything to look like so neat. I don't want to be judged, but it's like you live there, you know? So, like, when you want it to be, because you live there. And so just feeling that, like it was just such a beautiful example. And about the story about the lake, how yeah, it looks better because we make it up in our minds and the minds take off like the chariot and just come up with these sand castles in the sky that we want to move into. And then you get there and it's like, oh, this is not a good place to live. It's not a good place to be. And I also really, really appreciated when you said, even as we're thinking about enjoying even like without even consciously doing it, at the same time, you think about your suffering because that's the reality of the material world. And whether or not you want to acknowledge it, deep inside, you know that, as a spirit soul, you know that. And so, how fortunate are we to know it consciously and then to have a way to begin to learn to transcend that, through our sadhana, through association with devotees, through the mercy of Guru, through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. We have such wonderful, wonderful tools, like a spiritual kit that's just been handed to us. And so, let's use it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I so enjoyed your class this morning.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's so true. That example that you were just saying. It's like they clean everything, but then we live here, so it's up to us if we want to keep it clean. I'm like hearing that and looking at like the other side of the room you guys can't see, which is pretty messy. So I'm like, yeah, it's just so disturbing living in a messy place. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep my heart clean for Krishna. Thank you so much for sharing. It's so nice to hear. We just have one question on the chat. Um, how do we know what's a need and what's a desire picked up from our surrounding? How do we know what's a need and what's a desire picked up from our surrounding? Hmm. I guess, I mean, my first thought is change your surroundings and see, does that need, does that desire stay with you or is it change? Or, I guess that's a interesting question. I'm not sure. Let me think about that. Because sometimes our surroundings or our conditioning sticks with us for a while. So I'm definitely trying to figure that out now as well. Like, is my is this a need that I have? So the need to do this? Or is it just a desire that I have because I've been conditioned it for so long that this is something that I need? Um, I think if we look at it in relationship to what is like our ultimate need, what is our ultimate need that we want. And for everybody, it's different. Like when we internally look at ourselves and we think, um, what is my, like, who do I want to be? What is the need that I want for myself? What is the best version of myself that I want to be? I want to be a um, sincere devotee that strives to, uh, always progress in my spiritual life and takes all opportunities to hear and chant. Okay, so then what is the needs that follow that we need to achieve that self? And then I guess that helps kind of sway it out. Like, is this actually a need that I need for myself to become this person that I want to be? Um, does this help in some way? Does this help like regulate my desires? Or is this more of just a something that I'm working to get rid of that I've been dealing with for so long that in order to get free from it, I kind of have to indulge in it a little bit here and there to slowly lose the taste for it, I guess. I don't think I really answered your question, but general principle when in doubt, do without. That's probably, yeah. Thank you, Tarek, for proving that's a much clearer answer. In general principle, when in doubt, don't do it, and then see, oh, does it make a difference? Oh, I don't actually need it. Okay, great. Don't need it. Not a need, just a desire. Carry on. Um, any final comments or questions? Calculating, you can comment more if you have anything.
Hare Krishna. Hey, I want to say I really enjoyed this class. And in particular, I enjoyed hearing about um, both about how nice it is to chant the Lord's holy names, to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam. And I'd like to meditate on these facts. Um, these things are, of course, transcendentally wonderful, so pleasing that that by relishing these transcendental tastes, we can forget about everything else. Everything else pales by comparison. At least in time, our taste increases to the point where all the material tastes that we have been accustomed to become insignificant and even distasteful, because gradually we realize that when we entertain the material desires and try to gratify our senses, it actually detracts from our transcendental taste. And so it becomes distasteful. We gradually become conditioned to be repulsed by the prospect of sense gratification. Um, I had some specific thoughts about this, and somehow my mind has dropped a bit, and I can't remember what it was that I was trying to say. I'm having a senior moment, um, but I want to thank you for your class. It was um, inspiring and tasty. Yeah, I just thinking about how much I enjoy hearing and chanting. Um, I'm always lamenting that I don't have more time for reading. There's so many things to read. I wish I could read all of them, and I'm thinking that there are so many things that I want to read. I will not be able to read them in this lifetime. There are so many books that I've yet to delve into, and there just isn't enough time. My life is coming to an end, and I have so many responsibilities still, trying to um, wind down my responsibilities, and still I've got services, so many things. Be nice if I could retire to just reading, studying, but my life just doesn't permit. But how wonderful it is to hear all these things, and the wonderful effect. It's just so nice. The nectar of the holy names is just incomparable and ever increasing. There is nothing that compares. It's just so nice. That's all I want. I just want to relish these things, just dive deeply. Um, I think it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur that advised that we should dive deeply into the ocean of the nectar of the holy names. Um, I like to think about that. I, I was just reading recently, who was it? George Harrison was talking about chanting time with John Lennon. They were sailing through the Greek islands, the Mediterranean. They had a lot of time, and they had been listening to. They had not yet met the devotees, but they somehow had acquired a copy of um, the recording of Srila Prabhupada chanting. The album was entitled "One Hum." It was an LP that was produced really early in the history of the movement. So they had picked up on this chanting, and um, they were trying to repeat this, playing along with playing ukulele and chanting Hare Krishna, and they gradually discovered that once they got into it, they couldn't stop. They went on chanting for days, and they just couldn't stop chanting. It was so pleasing. And that taste for chanting comes quickly and easily. I know I experienced throughout my devotional career. I've always been dreading the moment when at some point or other I have to interrupt my chanting to do some service or other, or whatever the situation requires. My wife actually becomes angry with me. She starts snapping at me if I have to talk to her or something while she's chanting. She can't bear to have her chanting interrupted for any purpose. It's just, it's all nice. And gradually you come to a point at which you realize that any type of sense gratification, um, even the simple and subtlest things, has an effect. It actually detracts from the quality of your chanting, and so it becomes repulsive, which is a wonderful thing to experience. You quickly become more and more detached from the mundane, and the attachment for the transcendental increases. I remember the story, and I come back a little bit now. I was thinking about an example that's often given. We want to advance in Krishna consciousness. We want to be able to situate ourselves somehow or other very fully in the spiritual nature. We'd like to be able to enter Krishna's Leela, and but to do that, we have to uproot our our attachments to the material. And there's a stage early in our progress when we are partway in the under the shelter of the spiritual nature, and partly within the scope of the material nature, which is a precarious situation. The example is given is that it is like having one foot in each of two different boats, which is a very precarious situation. If you have any experience with small boats, if you try to do something like that, the two boats would separate and they'll wind up falling in the water in between them. You can't stand in two boats at the same time. You've got to go one way or the other way. And so we really want to situate ourselves in the one boat of the spiritual nature. And it means that we have to abandon these ideas of trying to somehow enjoy the material nature and still maintain some of those attachments. It's one of the offenses in the chanting of the holy name to maintain material attachments even after understanding some of the instructions on the matter. We've got to do it sooner or later. At some point or other, we've got to break those attachments. And why not sooner? Why not do it right now? It doesn't have to take a long time. It doesn't have to be a gradual process. We make it a gradual process because we maintain, just stubbornly insist on maintaining these attachments. It doesn't have to be a gradual process. We can drop it in an instant. But we have to have the other foot firmly situated in the transcendental boat. So our sadhana is the critical factor there. Cultivation of that transcendental taste is what will make it possible for us to pick up the other foot that's situated in the material nature. There's an example given to describe that as well. It's like an inchworm. Inchworm proceeds down a branch. He picks up the front part of his body, reaches forward, and once he's firmly grabs the branch in front of him, then he picks up the hind legs and brings them forward. So the process is like that. That you, in order to disconnect yourself from the material, you have to grab hold of the spiritual. And the process is simple and sublime. It's just you just have to hear in any sort of way, just chanting and hearing, or reading and hearing in that way. They're both the same. It's the same process of hearing, and by that process, quickly a taste is achieved, and that taste just keeps increasing more and more. So gradually, everything else becomes insignificant, completely insignificant, and you can easily cross beyond it, like the water in a cow's hoof prints. Very easy to step over, no big deal. So, hearing, so important. So the whole process, hearing and chanting. But it's Srila Prabhupada said, it's not a chore, it's not work, it's recreation. Our process is not recreation. We chant and dance and feast. We honor prasad and we chant and dance, and when we're tired from doing that, then we honor prasad, and then more chanting and dancing. It's all recreation. So what could be better than that? Wonderful process, so nice. I've taken us over time again. My apologies. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for sharing. That's super nice to hear and very encouraging that that's possible and easy as you're explaining. Yeah, very encouraging for myself. Thank you for sharing such nice realizations. All right, we'll end there. Thank you for someone's attention, kindness, and attendance. Gantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaur Vimanandi Hari Hari Bol.